Hi, English teachers. Take a look at this lesson. It's called All About Brazil. So this is a kids ESL speaking unit, and you teach the child English through a real world topic. So in this case, Brazil. You're teaching them English at the same time you're teaching them world culture. So my lessons always come with like beautiful graphics. For example, like these ones, these pictures, and also at the end of the lesson, it comes with practice questions for the students to do, and also they come with answer keys. And so here at the beginning of all my lessons, I have a couple of warm-up slides. So this is a great way for you and a student to kick off the lesson and to break the ice. So for example, here, do you like traveling, right? Where do you want to go for a trip, and get them talking. If you notice here at the bottom left hand corner, there's a yellow box. This is where I put all the question prompts. So I designed these specifically so that you, the teacher, don't need to come up with your own questions. They're here to save you the time, and all you have to do is follow these questions and talk to the students about it. But of course, if you have your own questions that you can come up with, by all means, throw them in. So like I said, so this is a first warm-up slide asking your student where they like to travel, and another one is like a choice, right? Would you rather go bird watching or relax on the beach? So these are questions that it's kind of like setting the tone, right, for the actual lesson that's coming up. And then after the couple of warm-up slides, this is the beginning of the lesson. And so this is a world map that introduces where Brazil is. And I also have the names of the different continent, right? And then here's like a simple sentence. Get your students to read it and listen, pay attention to their pronunciation and their, and their intonation. And you ask them questions over here, right? Which continent is your country on, right? Share your experience and ask them to, circle, where they're, circle the country that they live in, right? So here, next one, then I go further in to talk about Brazil, about the Amazon forest. So get the student again to read this, and then here, more questions here for you to follow, right? And you can ask your student, like, are there any big forests in your country? Have you ever gone hiking in the forest? And what can you see? What do you think you can see? Or what do you think you can find inside a big forest? Okay. And then I go on to talk a little bit about the importance of the Amazon rainforest to the world. How, because it's got so millions of trees, we call the forest the lungs of the earth, right? And here's a guided question, right? So you can actually, when you ask these questions, some of the questions you were just like, I put them there so that is to check whether the student understand what they're reading, right? So for example, here's a question: why is the Amazon rainforest like the lungs of the earth? You can you can get the answers here, right? It says here the Amazon rainforest is like the lungs of the earth because it helps, to give clean air, right? So you can, all these answers either like it's from their personal views, or you can get the answers from the sentences from the slide. Okay. Next one up is I introduce the different types of amazing plants and trees inside the rainforest, like these big lilies, right? You can ask them like, how much weight do you think the lilies can take? For example, right? How many frogs can sit on it, right? Or look at this big tree. How old do you think this tree is? And how many people do you think it takes to wrap around to circle this big tree? And this just you can just get them their imagination going. The next one up is I talk about the amazing animals inside the rainforest. So I give examples like the toucan, the jaguar, the monkey, and the sloth. And ask them like, why are there so many animals that live inside the rainforest? And they can get the answers here, right, after they read the sentence, right? Because there's a lot of food and water in the rainforest, and they can find different places as homes. Next one, introduce the piranhas. They're meat-eating fish. And why? Because they have sharp teeth, right? Ask them some funny questions like, would you touch a piranha? Right? Have you ever seen a piranha? And then after that, I talk about the capybara. It is the largest rodent in the world, right? And I talk to them. Have you seen one at the zoo, right? And when you talk about the word rodent, right? Give examples of rodents, right? You can throw one example and ask them for more examples. So I would say, an example of a rodent is a mouse, right? So can you think of some other examples? maybe like get them to talk about squirrels, guinea pigs, yeah, hamsters, etc. And after that, I talk about the people that live inside the rainforest, the indigenous people, and how do they survive in there, right? They build their own houses. They can make medicine from the plants, and they get food from the rainforest. So they know how to take care of themselves, and you can talk to them about that. And then I talk about the carnival in Brazil, which is one of the biggest festivals of the world, and ask them to describe the picture. And then, ask them, like, what are these people celebrating? And when is it, right? Because here the sentence says it happens in early March. So ask the question, when is it? And get the student to talk about their festivals from their country. And next, I have I talk about soccer, which is the most popular sport in Brazil, and everybody loves playing soccer there. And so ask the student, talk about some of the popular sports in your country, right? And what about yourself? Personally, what sports do you like? And you can tell your student what sports you like, right? Then I talk about beach volleyball. Do you like, ask a student, do you enjoy playing beach volleyball, or do you like to play volleyball indoor, like at a gym or something? And then I talk about the different types of Brazilian food. Ask them, like, which type of food would you like to try, and get them to talk about, the kind of food that they eat. Is their diet similar to Brazilians or different, right? Because Brazilians, they eat a lot of, bread and potatoes, whereas and a lot of meat, whereas in some Asian cultures, they eat a lot of rice and noodles. And ask them to compare their diets, compare and contrast. And also talk about, Brazil, they are the largest coffee producer in the world. So and ask them, does your country produce coffee beans, right? And the question here, one of the questions says, who is the largest coffee producers in the world? So it's here, right? You get the answer here. Okay, and then next, I talk about, the type of stuff that Brazil produces and sells to other countries. Example, like soybeans, right? Like crops, right? Like corn, and then sugar, right? And then coffee, and then have meat. And they also export like minerals, like iron ore, and also they make airplanes and auto parts, right? So you can talk about that and ask your student, what does your country sell to the rest of the world? And ask them, are you able to like get Brazilian products in your country? So at the end of the lesson, and by the way, I have like 40 plus pages of lesson. So this is just um, a demo, right? There's more to it. So at the end there's a summary, right? So have your student give a summary of the lesson. It is more chance for them to speak to you. Okay, and after that, here comes the exercises. Get your students to do the exercises, and you can take it up with your students. And for the true or false, if they notice that something is false, then they need to give you the correct answer. Get them to give you the correct answer. And then I also include the answer keys, so you can just check their answers based on my answer keys. So yeah, if you're interested, visit my store, teacherspayteachers.com. My store is called the Speak Up English Talk Resources. I do sell lessons individually, and also they come in packages. All right, thank you. Bye.